Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for August 25th, 2022, around 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot to talk about today, including the potential for multiple tropical cyclones to be forming in the Atlantic Basin over the next several days. Is there another storm on the horizon? Let's go and jump straight into everything. Taking a wide look across the tropical Atlantic this afternoon, we notice that it is starting to pick up with activity across the basin today. First of all, starting from left to right, we have a tropical disturbance that is now moving past the Lesser Antilles currently. This is a very disorganized, broad tropical wave. This is not very well organized, but will have some shot at development as it nears the western part of the Caribbean. We'll talk about that here in a minute. And then in the deep tropics in the MDR, we have a cluster of systems down here along the monsoon trough and these tropical waves that have emerged off the coast of Africa. We have this area in the central Atlantic right here. We can kind of see some shower and thunderstorm activity, but this, believe it or not, is not the main area for disturbance that might go on to develop. If we actually look at the National Hurricane Center 2 p.m. tropical, or the 8 a.m. tropical weather outlook rather, we notice that again in the Lesser Antilles right now, we have this potential system right here. Development chances are no longer expected in the eastern part of the Caribbean. Instead, development chances could occur as it passes south of Hispaniola in the Dominican Republic and likely south of Jamaica. So this will have some shot at tropical cyclone formation as it enters a more favorable environment in the Western Caribbean. And this is now starting to be that time where we have to watch this area, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. And then we also have this tropical disturbance south of the Cabo Verde Islands currently. Will be moving towards the west and may even dip southwest for a time, and development chances are possible from this disturbance as well. We take a look here at the visible satellite imagery for portions of the tropical Atlantic today. We notice that here is the tropical disturbance right now moving through portions of the Lesser Antilles and the Windward Islands. Again, this is not really well convective organized, but there is a little bit of rotation with it. We can kind of see that there is at least some semblance of a broad circulation in here. So all this really needs is more convection and less of this dry stable layer to the north here. And this looks increasingly likely to happen as it encounters a more favorable environment. And then out here in the eastern tropical Atlantic, we have just a broad monsoon trough. And then we also have a tropical disturbance here. Now, this is the area officially being tagged by NHC, but notice how there's all of this convection to the south along the monsoon trough, and that's actually what's going to try to dive this system towards the southwest a bit. And this is actually favorable because if this got slingshotted to the north, development chances would effectively be cut off. But because this will be kind of shot down towards the southwest, development chances are actually a bit more favorable at that particular point. If we look at the upper ocean heat content here, this is basically just a measure of the warm water depth in the oceans here. We notice that again, most of the main development region here has at least some of this lighter shade of blue here. So not super favorable, but favorable enough for some development. And then once we start getting out here in the western part of the Atlantic Basin, we're going to have to really kind of watch, especially the Caribbean and even the Gulf of Mexico for that matter, because if we get any type of disturbance that moves through there, in September or October, we could be dealing with some real problems. And we saw that with Hurricane Ida last year, and we've seen that certainly in previous years with all the hurricanes that we saw in even 2020. So this is going to be a real problem that we're going to have to monitor very closely as we head later into the season, as we would start to anticipate more Caribbean development. Now, if we look at the GFS forecast, this is the 850 millibar vorticity, or the spin in the atmosphere at 5,000 feet off the ground. This is the 12Z run, but we'll go down to the 06Z run here. Now, we notice that our tropical disturbance in the Caribbean here doesn't really start to pick up any interest until about Monday the 29th. So this is the 29th here, and we actually do have a system that tries to get going near the coastline of Central America. So it's going to be very important to see whether or not this actually gets buried into Central America, or this actually has a fighting chance because it's further north. And again, if it's further north, that has that chance to become something. If we actually look and go down here into a close-in sector here, if we look at the relative humidity, we actually notice that it is enveloped within a pretty decent moist pocket in here. There is some dry air around, but it's not a lot of dry air. It's not like these darker browns here that you kind of see over South Carolina and North Carolina. It's not those. So there is some dry air in the kind of far periphery, but it's not in the immediate vicinity of this system. Now, if we actually look at the upper level wind environment at this time, it is going to be a little bit hostile because, again, we have this kind of displaced anticyclone here that's actually over portions of Texas or over the Gulf of Mexico close to Texas. And we kind of see that it's just pumping around some of the shear. And so it's not really going to be super favorable for development, but we actually kind of move out further in time, and there actually does seem to be the potential of development. And here on the GFS forecast in the longer range, there's a kind of a secondary system that goes on to develop. Not really sure it's actually part of this first system, but either way, the window for favorability might become more prevalent here by about the 1st of September. But it seems like our system is probably going to be long gone at this point. So we'll have to continue to monitor that, but I'm not really overly super concerned about that system, at least for the time being. And on the ECMWF forecast here, we notice that it's much of the same thing. Our system never really gets consolidated here on the European. But we notice that we have a few other systems trailing behind that. And again, it's going to be a very slow evolution. Anything that comes out of the tropical Atlantic is going to have a very slow evolution. We can see this even on the GFS forecast, for example. Very slow evolution. It takes several days. It takes them over a 5-day period along this monsoon trough to actually get anything to develop. There's several areas of spin out here with new tropical waves coming off, with additional waves that have moved into the central MDR. So there's going to be a very complex interaction between all of these systems that we're seeing out here in the tropical MDR currently. And in fact, development chances may in fact not even happen right away. So we're still several days off, I think, from getting any good signal on what happens here. If we look at the GFS ensembles here, the mean sea level pressure, we notice that it's kind of similar. Now, the one thing I am seeing in the GFS ensembles, though, is that there certainly is at least somewhat of an uptick here by about 144 hours in the Caribbean. So this is by about the 31st of August. We're seeing an uptick of areas of low pressures here, indicating potential tropical cyclones within this region. And again, it would not surprise me if that happened, but the GFS is very notorious for a very high false alarm ratio in this area, so I'm taking that with a grain of salt. But either way, it is certainly possible. And then out here in the main development region, we notice that the potential for a very complex interaction. We could see at least one or two tropical systems try to form out of this if the environment cooperates. If we actually look at the upper level wind environment here on the GFS ensembles, it's actually not all that unfavorable, but we will have to contend with some of that troughing still up here, causing a little bit of wind shear, but we'll see just exactly how much shear gets into here. If we look at the European ensembles, kind of similar as well. We see that the European does bring in a little bit of an uptick here by about the 31st of August in the Caribbean as well. So it is trying to pick up on some of that. And again, these two other tropical systems that look to be trying to form in the main development region, this could finally signal the ramp up to the peak season here, which is really closing in on just about 10 days away at this point on September 10th. So once we hit September, it's 10 days away. Then it usually starts the downtrend from there before a little bit of a secondary peak in October. So we'll have to kind of keep an eye on that. Again, the threat areas going into September and October, generally speaking, are going to be in the western part of the Atlantic Basin, including the Caribbean. There still remains a very high to high risk of tropical cyclone, or the potential for tropical cyclone impacts, a tropical storm within 25 miles of a given point for the entire Caribbean portions of the Bahamas and, of course, the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, this is going again off the latest Colorado State University forecast, but this is basically just showing that there still remains that potential. So even one storm, it only takes one, and we saw that with Hurricane Michael back in 2018. So just kind of keep an eye on everything there. And of course, I will be keeping an update you as time goes on with everything there. All right. So that being said, I do hope you have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Mike O'Malley, and I'll be talking to you guys again some more tomorrow.